Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day out there. It is 0214 or February 14th, 2014. We have a lot of great hemp news for you tonight. Mr. Casper Leach is standing by right next to me from Time for Hemp, and he is going to be my joint host this evening. Jan Sue Hurst and John Cornett are standing by, ready to play another exciting duo. We have some great show and tell items for our mid-show segment, a lot of film clips as well from over the past few decades. So stay tuned. We'll be back with a lot of really great news right after our infamous Dancing Cannabis Leaves.
I feel the force.
All right, our first story tonight starts with the federal government. Just a few hours ago today, the Obama administration announced new guidelines that will allow banks to legally provide financial services to state-licensed marijuana businesses. 20 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized marijuana for medicinal use, and 2 of those states, Colorado and Washington, recently legalized marijuana like alcohol. Medical marijuana advocates are applauding the new memorandum, giving long-awaited guidance to financial institutions. A refusal to engage in these services has plagued medical marijuana businesses for years, dating back to the Bush administration. Businesses in states like California, Colorado, Washington, Michigan, and others have been forced to deal in large amounts of cash and the risks that are inherent with that. Many banks have been afraid to open checking or savings accounts for legalized marijuana businesses out of fear of breaking federal law. As a result, these businesses are forced to deal with large amounts of cash, creating public safety risk for employees, bystanders, and police officers. In a joint statement, the United States Department of Justice and the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, a bureau of the United States Department of Treasury, said the move gives greater financial transparency to the industry that remains illegal in nearly every state. It also makes clear that banks would be helping law enforcement with information that is particularly valuable in filing regular reports that offer insights about how marijuana businesses work. Nearly all of the more than 1,000 licensed dispensaries in California and Colorado have for years been forced to operate on a cash-only basis, considerably increasing the risk not just for the affected marijuana businesses, but also for the tens of thousands of patients who've had to use cash to obtain their medication. U.S. Attorney General Holder's announcement closely follows guidance issued in August by the Justice Department that indicated the Obama administration will not undermine state marijuana legalization, provided states are responsibly regulating marijuana businesses. In a recent interview with The New Yorker, President Obama said marijuana is less harmful to people who use it than alcohol. The war on marijuana is creating an unjust racial disparity, and it's important for legalization to move forward in Colorado and Washington because it's important for society not to have a single situation in which a large portion of the people have at one time or another broken the law and only a few, select few, get punished, end quote. It appears that Obama's administration is trying to provide as much protection as possible for the marijuana industry, given the constraints of federal law. The assurances the administration have provided appear fairly substantial and will hopefully prove sufficient so that banks will feel safe doing business with the marijuana industry. According to Ethan Nadelman, he said, quote, "I have to say I'm impressed by how the White House is trying to make this work, especially given the inability of Congress to do anything constructive in this area. We've been pushing the federal government for years to make these common sense concessions, and we're pleased the Obama administration has finally done so." At the same time, a piecemeal approach to medical marijuana policy is short-sighted and is an issue that deserves a comprehensive health solution. We'll certainly be working with banks, credit unions, and credit card companies to ensure proper implementation of the federal guidelines. Removing the risks of operating an all-cash business cannot be overstated, but we'll also continue to put pressure on the Obama administration to wrap these types of discrete practices into a more comprehensive medical marijuana policy. Here in Oregon, a bill that would ask Oregon voters if they want to legalize marijuana while leaving the regulations up to the legislature passed its first committee on Thursday. Senate Bill 1556 passed the Senate Judiciary Committee with a 3-2 vote, with all Democrats supporting it and all Republicans opposing it. The bill now goes to the Senate Rules Committee. While Thursday was the legislative deadline for moving bills out of committee, that deadline doesn't apply to the Rules Committee. It makes more sense for lawmakers to work out the details of regulating marijuana production and sales instead of leaving it up to activists, according to Chairman Floyd Przansky, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, a Democrat out of Eugene. The measure, Senate Bill 1556, was amended before passing to lower the amount of cannabis that adults 21 and older would be allowed to possess in private. The amount in the initial introduced bill had been 8 ounces and 4 plants, and this was moved down to 6 ounces and 3 plants in this amended version. According to Representative Peter Buckley, he gives this bill a 50-50% chance of passing the Oregon legislature. Several legislators don't want to become attached to anything having to do with marijuana, according to Buckley. Przansky and Buckley point out that their bill doesn't ask legislators to take a position on marijuana, just asks voters if they want to legalize. Cannabis activists, such as myself, are already gathering signatures for our 2 initiatives. Initiative 21 would amend the Oregon Constitution, ending criminal penalties for cannabis and permitting adult recreational marijuana use, possession, and cultivation. Initiative 22, the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act of 2014, creates a commission to regulate the cultivation, processing, and sale of marijuana, generating hundreds of millions of dollars for the Oregon General Fund, helping to pay for schools and social services. Our organization, Help End Marijuana Prohibition in Oregon, and Campaign for the Restoration and Regulation of Hemp have kicked off a vigorous volunteer and paid petition drive to get both those initiatives on the ballot for 2014. We have just over 40,000 signatures. We need 87,000 for the statutory measure and 116,000 valid registered Oregon voter signatures for our constitutional amendment to qualify by July. Marijuana prohibition does not work and is expensive to maintain, and we are moving forward on a better path for hemp and marijuana here in Oregon. On a national basis, lawmakers across the United States are turning to relaxing the marijuana laws as a winning issue in 2014, and Democratic candidates appear to be intent on owning the cannabis issue this year. On Tuesday, Democratic gubernatorial candidates in Texas, Maryland, and Pennsylvania all made statements supporting marijuana policy reform, according to Max Lockey at MSNBC. In Florida, where incumbent GOP Governor Rick Scott opposes the medical marijuana constitutional amendment that will be voted on this November in the state of Florida, but his Democratic challenger, Charlie Crist, supports it. Cannabis looms as a big factor in that race. In Texas, Democratic candidate Wendy Davis came out in support of medical marijuana, as well as revealing openness to the idea of decriminalization in an interview with the Dallas Morning News. She said, quote, "I personally believe that marijuana should be allowed for," end quote, Davis said, adding she would support reducing penalties for marijuana possession. In Maryland, gubernatorial candidate and state delegate Heather Meiser is running an underdog campaign with marijuana legalization as a major plank in her platform. Her position has impacted that of frontrunner candidate Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, who's responded to Meiser's call to support her Maryland Marijuana Decriminalization Act in the state assembly with a letter calling cannabis laws, quote, costly, ineffective, and racially biased, and explicitly supporting decriminalization for the first time. And in Pennsylvania, almost the entire Democratic field now publicly supports some sort of cannabis policy reform. Pennsylvania Representative Allison Schwartz, who'd already supported medical marijuana, told the Philadelphia Weekly that cannabis is overcriminalized And what we should do is decriminalize possession, according to Shorts, who is leading by 8 points in that race. And she said that those caught with small amounts of cannabis shouldn't get a criminal record. Progress at the federal level, too. A group of lawmakers, including 17 Democrats, led by Portland's own Representative Earl Blumenauer, and one lone Republican, California Representative Dana Rohrabacher, on Wednesday sent a letter to President Obama asking him to instruct Attorney General Holder to classify marijuana in a more appropriate way. The lawmakers, many from states which have legalized cannabis for medical or recreational purposes, requested the changes in part so that marijuana businesses in states where it is legal can deduct their expenses and receive tax credits. President Obama addressed marijuana legal classification in a recent interview, and the language of the Controlled Substance Act itself gives broad powers to the Attorney General to change drug scheduling. With Democratic pollsters predicting a record low turnout of young people in 2014, candidates and activists are searching for ways to motivate voters to go to the polls this November, and candidates taking pro-cannabis positions, as well as the presence of marijuana ballot initiatives, can definitely do that. In Denver, Colorado, 2 publications have launched a federal lawsuit against the state of Colorado over laws prohibiting the state's legal adult social marijuana industry from advertising on television, radio, online, or in print. A suit filed this week in U.S. District Court in Denver by High Times Magazine and Denver alternative weekly newspaper Westward says that the rules are unjustifiably burdensome and unconstitutionally violate First Amendment free speech rights, reports Keith Kaufman at Reuters News Agency. According to these rules, the government restrictions on commercial speech that concern lawful activity and is not misleading violate the First Amendment. The complaint reads, it's almost, the advertising limits do not apply to Colorado's medical marijuana industry, which has been around since 2001. Colorado Attorney General John Souther's office said it was reviewing the complaint. The lawsuit names the defendants Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper and the head of the State Department, which oversees the marijuana industry. It says that Colorado's voters approved adult social marijuana and its regulation like alcohol, and that no such ad bans apply to the alcohol industry. Out in Anchorage, Alaska, state election officials have confirmed that a proposed initiative to regulate the production and retail sale of cannabis to adults has obtained the necessary number of signatures from registered voters to appear on the Alaska ballot in August. The initiative's proponents, the Campaign to Regulate Marijuana in Alaska, gathered more than 45,000 signatures from registered Alaskan voters. Last week, the director of Alaska's Division of Elections confirmed that of those signatures, 31,593 have been verified, thus qualifying the Alaska measure for a public vote. The Alaska Lieutenant Governor's office is expected to certify the measure for the 2014 ballot in the coming days. Once certified, the initiative will be placed on the August 19th primary election ballot, as is required by Alaska election law. If approved by voters, the measure would legalize the adult possession of up to 1 ounce of cannabis, as well as cultivating of up to 6 plants, 3 flowering, for personal consumption. The measure would also allow for the establishment of licensed commercial cannabis production and retail sales of marijuana and marijuana-infused products to those over the age of 21. Commercial production and retail sale of cannabis would be subject to taxation, but no taxes would be imposed on those who choose to engage in non-commercial activities, growing small quantities of marijuana for personal use, or engaging in not-for-profit transfers of limited quantities of cannabis. Public consumption of cannabis in Alaska under the proposed initiative would be subject to a civil fine. The measure neither amends the state's existing medical marijuana law, which was approved by Alaska voters in 1998, nor does it diminish any privacy rights established by the state's Supreme Court in its 1975 ruling Raven versus the state of Alaska. Under present law, the possession of marijuana not in one's residence is classified as a criminal misdemeanor punishable by up to 90 days in jail and a $2,000 fine in Alaska. According to the results of a statewide public policy poll survey released last week, 55% of Alaska's registered voters think marijuana should be legally allowed for recreational use, and that stores should be allowed to sell it, and that its sales should be taxed and regulated similar to alcohol. Only 39% of the respondents oppose the idea. The survey possesses a margin of error of plus or minus 3.4%. Our last story tonight, out of Washington, D.C., members of the United States House and Senate have approved an amendment in the federal farm bill, loosening federal restrictions pertaining to the state-authorized cultivation of industrial hemp. House members approved the language, which has been advocated for in conference committee by the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky. Last week, members of the Senate followed suit on Tuesday, sending the bill to the President's desk. President Obama is expected to sign the legislation imminently. The amendment, quote, authorizes an institution of higher education or a State Department of Agriculture to grow or cultivate industrial hemp for research purposes if the laws of the state permit its growth and cultivation, end quote. Some 10 states have enacted legislation allowing for state-authorized cultivation of hemp for research or commercial purposes. The approval of this language in the United States Farm Bill marks the first change in federal policy regarding hemp cultivation since World War II. According to a 2013 white paper published in the United States Congressional Research Service, hemp is genetically different from cultivated cannabis because it contains virtually no THC. The paper stated, quote, a commercial hemp industry in the United States could provide opportunities as an economically viable alternative crop for some U.S. growers, end quote. The United States is the only developed nation in the world that doesn't allow industrial hemp cultivation as an economic crop. That is the end of our rather lengthy hemp news segment. And standing by at their musical instruments, guitar, are John Cornett and Jan Sue Hurst. Welcome back, folks. Thank you. Good job. That is John Cornett and Jan Sue Hurst. Another great song. Do you have a name for that?
Yes, it's called Ditty Number 2.
Oh, okay.
We made it up on the set here, Paul.
Oh, all right. Well, live, a jam. So welcome to the show. We are taking your phone calls tonight. If you have a question for us about ending adult marijuana prohibition, anything to do with cannabis, helping medical marijuana patients, or restoring industrial hemp, then give us a call at 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. Welcome back to the show, Casper.
Thank you so much, and happy Valentine's Day to you and the family here that makes everything happen, behind the magic, all the little camera work and sound and all the lights, all
takes
the magic that goes on in TV.
Team of at least 6 or 7 people to keep this thing running here.
And we are like a big family here, and I feel myself to be honored to be part of it. So happy Valentine's Day to my family here at the studio.
All right, all right. Yeah, it's been a pretty exciting week in terms of news. With just today, the federal government saying they're going to remove the restrictions through presidential fiat, through the Justice Department, that have stopped banks from taking marijuana businesses, legal state marijuana businesses as their customers.
You said it earlier, and Peter Chris has said it, prohibition is a luxury item. And as long as we're hoarding cash behind the counter when people come in and make a payment for their medications, Uncle Sam's not getting his cut of the pie. Mm-hmm. And so that really freaks him out. So money talks. And I like to also think that, the 100 monkey, where after 100 monkeys start doing things, we crossed that 100 monkey point sometime in the last year. Mm-hmm. And people are starting, more and more politicians are coming on saying they want to end prohibition. Marijuana is not that bad. Medical marijuana is wonderful. We need recreational marijuana. We can't afford to force the law. And it is, the money behind it talks. It costs a lot of money to incarcerate people for this weed. It's like locking people up for growing dandelions, and you just can't lock all those people up. And if they're going to grow dandelions and sell dandelions, then it would be smart to find some way to get your finger in that pie. Mm-hmm. And that's what Uncle Sam's doing now.
Well, right now, marijuana businesses in Colorado, California, and everywhere that they have to collect their cash. They're taking it in grocery bags and slipping into the bank to deposit it, or not to the bank, but to state tax officials to pay their tax bills, or to pay the IRS their tax bills. So if you don't have a bank account, it makes it very, very difficult.
It does.
They've got to carry this large amount of cash, and it's led to a number of murders down in California, a number of armed robberies and murders of people.
But I do have a suggestion. Those people who have large amounts of cash on hand, you can turn it into a money order. Send some of it to Paul. Send some of it to me.
Well, not me personally.
The cost of the signature.
Not me personally, but to our initiative campaign. That would be a good thing.
Exactly.
You can go to hemp.org if you're interested in making a contribution to help us with our
And we're legal, right? We can take the money and channel it right into the people who are raising signatures or into the network.
Exactly.
So you got
and we've got about 40,000 signatures right now.
You take those grocery sacks full of money and you start sending them our way.
Okay.
Right.
So, again, if you have a question for us tonight, you can call us at 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442.
And remember, I spent Christmas with Eric Holder year before last, right?
And
we smoked out, and partied.
I remember those photos you
he
showed here on our
me,
show.
He must have listened to me, Yeah.
Festive.
Talked him into it. He saw the light. It was that Paul Stanford herb that I think did it for him.
Well, okay. All right. I'll take that with a grain of salt, or maybe even better, a grain of hemp. But let's see. So the bank issue is one thing. Now we've had here in Oregon, the legislature has moved this bill, 1556, out of committee. And what it would do is it would refer to the people of the state of Oregon, by the Oregon legislature, a vote, a referendum, like an initiative, only they don't have to go out and gather signatures. So they can just put it right on the ballot without the governor's signature. It would legalize marijuana come January 1st of this year. I'm all in favor of that.
Right.
It would allow people, as amended, to grow 4 plants and possess 3 ounces, which
Is that for recreational?
That's for adult use with no license.
Oh,
so that
okay.
would happen immediately, and it also directs the legislature to tax and regulate the sale of marijuana next year.
Excellent.
They have a short session. They have to be out in about 3 weeks. So they have to pass this out. And one of the co-sponsors, the head of the Oregon State House of Representatives Budget Committee, Peter Buckley, of the House Ways and Means Committee, has said it has about a 50% chance of passage. So we're very hopeful that that will pass. And if it does, we will look at what passes and consider whether we'll withdraw our revised regulatory bill in favor of passing the ball to the legislature next year.
And that's what you kind of wanted to happen, isn't it? Because didn't you
It would
say
be a
that
good thing.
either they make up their mind and do something good for the state of Oregon, or we will force them to? And apparently
and
they
we still
realized you meant it.
can force them to anyway with the constitutional amendment that we're circulating. So while we would withdraw Initiative 22, perhaps, based on what the legislature does or doesn't do, we would go for Initiative 22 is the statutory measure, almost identical with some minor changes to ballot measure 80 that lost at the polls by about 4 percentage points last year. It got 47% of the vote, and it came about 100,000 votes shy of passing. And here in the Portland area, we got 61% of the vote, and we won in 3 other counties throughout the state. But the whole dynamic has changed now with the developments in right across the river from us in Washington.
Yeah, they have.
In the Rocky Mountain High.
It's another thing, too. Our legislative body realizes we can always go across the river and spend our money there, and they don't want to see that happen.
When I was a kid, John Denver's song Rocky Mountain High came out, and at the very end of it, he says, everybody's sitting around the campfire getting high. And so now I'm sure John Denver would be happy to know when he's up there, wherever he may be. He's gone now.
And he mentioned that, too, in Poems, Prayers, and Promises.
Oh, all right.
Beautiful song. I love it. Whenever I feel sad and want to cry, I listen to it. Yeah. About twice a year.
Well, that doesn't happen much. I know. No. But anyway.
And we got an audience member here.
An audience member has a question. Go right ahead, sir. Yeah.
I think it's great that Oregon allows out-of-state residents to get their card here so that they can be legal when they're here.
I agree.
But I have a friend who's a foreign national who hasn't achieved his U.S. citizenship yet, but he's an established Oregon resident.
Right.
Is that a problem for him?
You know, the only way we've checked, because we have a number of people from overseas that want to come here to treat their cancer or neurodegenerative diseases with cannabis and cannabis extracts. And so to be able to get an Oregon medical marijuana permit, the medical marijuana program says that you must have a medical visa, a visa from the U.S. State Department saying that you are allowed in the country for medical treatment. So outside of that exception, I don't believe they allow non-residents. But has your friend talked to the Oregon Health Department about that at all?
No, he hasn't.
Okay.
He
well,
wasn't
it couldn't
expecting
hurt to
trouble.
try. That's all I can say.
Okay.
You know, they're pretty accessible, and they are happy to answer those questions. But in checking on foreign nationals who wanted to come here to get treated for their cancer and neurodegenerative conditions, we were told by them at that time, probably about 5 or 6 months ago, that you had to have a medical visa from the United States State Department.
But there's a good chance your friend can run for president.
No, can't do that.
Just saying.
Yep. So we have several video clips we're going to run here, a couple of excerpts that they are preparing. We have a list of conditions there. You know, if you have chronic pain, nausea, glaucoma, any of those conditions, including cancer, AIDS, gastrointestinal ailments, neurodegenerative conditions, then you can get a medical marijuana permit wherever you live in the United States. We have people coming from all over the country. Oregon is the only state that issues a state license that permits a patient in the state of Oregon to possess, use, or grow medical marijuana. And in some cases, those licenses might be helpful in other states, and they do provide reciprocity in Michigan, Maine, Rhode Island, Arizona, and quite ironically, the District of Columbia. Used to be you had reciprocity where they accept out-of-state permits in Montana too, but the Montana legislature overturned that a couple of years ago.
They should add to that list of elements, I would think, pain from having teenagers and nausea from listening to politicians, because marijuana does help with both those situations, I'm told.
Okay. We have a little film clip we're going to run. It's a British documentary I recommend. It's called Magic Weed. We'll be back in just a moment.
The magic.
We are near Le Mans in west of France. Hemp has been grown here for hundreds of years for both domestic and industrial use. Farmers here still use the traditional method of processing hemp known as water retting. The stalks of hemp are extremely tough and resistant to rot, which is why it was traditionally used for ropes and canvas. Once harvested, hemp is left to soak in water before it is laid out into the fields to dry, so that the tough fibers may be more easily separated from each other. Even today, hemp fibers are broken down by hand, although an experienced hemp breaker can break from 100 to 200 pounds of hemp a day. This method still adds to the production cost. Cannabis sativa is one of the most ancient plants cultivated by mankind. Hemp processing was already developed in China 8,000 years before Christ was born. Hemp was first harvested for its seeds, a rich source of amino acids used for food. Then it was discovered that by breaking the stalks, they could use the fibers to make paper, as well as fishing nets and up to 5,000 hemp-related products, including, of course, textiles. The ancient Chinese called their country the land of hemp and mulberry. Mulberry leaves were used to feed silkworms, from which was produced the precious silk that only the rich and powerful could afford. Everyone else wore hemp clothing. Hemp is called ma by the Chinese, literally meaning plant with two forms, male and female. Hemp was also the first crop to be grown for use in war. The Chinese had originally used bamboo to make bowstrings. Then they discovered that the hemp fiber was stronger and lasted longer. Imperial decrees ordered that certain areas of the land would be exclusively used to grow hemp. An ancient legend says that hemp paper was discovered by Cai Lun, a scribe and eunuch of the imperial court. To publicize his discovery, Cai Lun pretended to die. He ordered that hemp paper should be burnt around his coffin. Then he arranged his own apparent resurrection and attributed it to the properties of his new invention. Ever since, hemp has been an integral part of the Chinese funeral ceremony known as Wu Fu, or the 5 levels of mourning. This code lays down, among other things, that the family wear different hemp clothes corresponding to their relation with the deceased. The Chinese jealously kept the secret of papermaking for centuries. It wasn't until the 5th century that this knowledge was passed on to other countries, finally appearing in Europe in the 8th century.
The word cannabis comes from the Babylonian canna, meaning cane or stalk, bis meaning twice, with 2 forms or sexes, cannabis. Interestingly, it has the same meaning in Chinese. The word ma is a word from a completely different culture, yet it means exactly the same. Ma means the plant from which we take the fibers and which has 2 sexes. For good hemp, you have to look for rich, strong fibers, and these attributes are most marked in the male plant. The female plant, on the other hand, is a plant used in smoking, because all the psychoactive substances concentrate there. It is a plant with 2 sexes, 2 attributes. This is something completely fundamental.
Cannabis has been used medically since the year 2800 BC, when Emperor Shen Nung founded the science of Chinese medicine. Wounds sustained in battle were bandaged in cannabis leaves. Today, doctors across the whole world are asking for the right to use cannabis as a treatment for pain, especially for cancer and AIDS.
So that's an excerpt from the British production Magic Weed. You can watch that whole thing out there. If you grab the video, I recommend picking it up. It's pretty good. How'd you like that?
I loved it, and it was nice to see Tommy Chong and Cheech in there.
That was a little...
They enjoy the Magic Weed, too.
I think Tommy came out on the better end of the Super Bowl here. Boy, that was a stomp. But we have a caller standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hey, how are you guys?
Very well. How are you?
I'm doing well. So this is the first time that I'm hearing you guys, and you're talking about legislation reform, and I am born in California, but I live in North Carolina, and I'm just kind of wondering where we are, you know, in all the reform.
Okay, so you're calling from California, you said?
I'm calling you from North Carolina.
Oh, okay, okay. I went to high school in Asheville, North Carolina, and also went to college there at the University of North Carolina for a couple of years. So know a lot of people back there, family as well. But
I've got high North Carolina.
Okay, the North Carolina high, Appalachian, Smoky
Excellent.
Mountain high. But gee, you know, there are initiatives in Florida right now for medical marijuana. There's this initiative that just made the ballot in Alaska that will legalize the production and sale of marijuana to adults and let adults have their own. Looks like we're going to vote on legalizing marijuana again here in Oregon this year as well. And so there's a lot of forward momentum, as we've seen even Southern governors such as Wendy Davis in Texas, Democratic challenger, advocating for medical marijuana, and Rick Perry, the Democrat in Texas, coming in the other way. I know there's been a medical marijuana bill for patients that's been proposed in North Carolina for the last several legislative sessions. Really hasn't got out of committee and hasn't passed. Back when I lived in North Carolina, back in the 70s, North Carolina is one of the 10 states that decriminalized marijuana in the 70s, so possession of less than an ounce is just an infraction there and a ticket. So North Carolina has one of the more enlightened marijuana policies, but there's a lot of forward momentum, as our initial newscast said.
Yeah, well, that all sounds good. And I didn't know that about North Carolina in the 70s, about having less than an ounce. Which is
they almost legalized or decriminalized a quarter pound. It first passed as 4 ounces, but then the legislature cut it back to just 1 ounce as a simple ticket rather than a jail or a criminal sanction. You don't have a criminal record for less than an ounce in North Carolina, or in Mississippi as well.
I think NORML made a statement on their website that about 23 states now have some sort of legislation going forward, either through the ballot or through their body, about marijuana. So it is becoming a new slogan for both policies to hang on to, right? Both politic parties.
Yeah,
they want to embrace it. They want your vote, and then when they get into office, they want your tax dollar. So they're going to get that through saying how wonderful marijuana is. You'll get out there and you'll vote for them.
Any other questions?
Yeah. No, I think that's good.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning, and thanks for watching from out there. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Right. And then we have a studio audience member that's here. In fact, if you'd like to come down to our studio audience, you can come down any Friday night. Well, we're about 45 Friday nights out of the year. There are several Fridays that we aren't on, but most any Friday night at 2766 Northeast MLK or Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. It's right at the corner of Northeast Graham. We have a little studio audience, and go right ahead.
And
studio
bring your own bud, right? Bring your own bud.
That helps.
Yeah.
I recommend coming. It's a fun place.
All right.
So I don't want to admit that I got powdery mildew in my indoor grow room, but if somebody were to have that, what do you do to get rid of that stuff?
You know, neem oil will help wipe that out. You don't want to use that on your buds, though, because it'll give it a dirty taste. You can get there with your hands in soapy water and wash it off, and then be sure to dry it, heat it up a little bit so that it'll evaporate more quickly. A little bit a warmer environment will allow that moisture to evaporate more quickly.
But if it's bad enough, isn't it better just to kill it and clean out your grow room and start
If it's
over
really
again?
bad, that might be an option.
Because if you're otherwise you're just going to wrestle with it from plant to plant, and when it's all said and done, you spend a lot of work for a little bit of bud. Where if you just went, cleaned it out, started over again, you could be back to where you're at now in 3 weeks, 5 weeks.
All depends on your access to clones and cuttings and seedlings and how big your plants are and whether they're in flower or not in flower.
True.
But if you're starting over anew, you've got the whole, probably at least a month and maybe 2 or 3 in the vegetative cycle, and then 2 more months in the bud cycle. So it does take a while to come back. But I think we have another caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Thanks, sir.
Yes.
Good to talk to you, Paul.
My pleasure.
I've watched your show quite a bit, but I can't remember you going in detail very much regarding sativa versus indica, and maybe if you could recommend some good sativa strains, or if you could just kind of give your opinion on sativa versus indica.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I know there's obviously
sativas generally have a narrower leaf, and so they also have a kind of a spicier, more awake sort of effect on the person who's smoking it or inhaling it or eating it. So it's not as usually as good for someone for sleep. It's more of something for being awake. I really believe that sativa and indica are both variations of the same species, that they're different varieties and they're not individual species. In fact, most of the cannabis you'll find out there is some blend of sativa varieties with indica varieties. And so the best way to tell the difference in the growing cycle is to look at the leaves. The narrow leaves are the sativa dominant strains, and the fatter leaves are indica dominated strains. Indicas tend to be a little bit more have that relaxing effect and skunky. The pure indicas have a skunky aroma. And so there are about a dozen different terpenes, or organic molecules that cause the aroma, and those are what give it the flavor and the taste. And so those terpenes are aromatic hydrocarbons. Those are also shared with other plants. For instance, limonene is found in lemons. It's also found in the cannabis varieties that tend to be sativa with the lemon flavor. And the skunky varieties, those are the more indica strains. And then there's myrcene is another terpene that's found in hops. It's also in cannabis, and that gives us kind of a sleepy effect as well. So the terpenes combined with the different cannabinoid profiles, both the THC and the CBD, CBC, CBN, the different cannabinoids have an entourage effect where the various combination of the terpenes and the cannabinoids give the difference in its effects on a different people. And different strains affect different people differently. You won't get the same effect all, with a sativa among everyone. That some people might find that increases anxiety, where an indica might not do that.
And I think, does an indica give you more bud per plant than sativa?
No, it really depends on how long they're cultivated. Indica buds tend to be bigger, though.
Okay.
But most cannabis that I've seen these days is some variation, some combination of sativa.
Always
and
a
indica.
hybrid.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, you mentioned the CBDs too. I heard a lot of people are moving their kids to Colorado, hoping to get in on some of that high CBD stuff. But yeah,
sure,
thanks a lot
CBDs
for
are
your
not
info.
just
Appreciate
found
it,
in the
Paul.
buds of cannabis. You can also find CBDs in the leaves of cannabis as well. So just growing the flowers for CBD is not necessary actually, but that knowledge isn't fully out there yet.
I think he hung up.
All right. Well, if you have a question or comment for us tonight, you can call us at 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. We have a little show and tell segment I'm going to run with right now. Starting down here, we have this British cannabis indica bottle from what is it? Evans Sons of Leicestershire out of London and Liverpool. So it's a blue cobalt bottle. This is extract of cannabis indica from the Fraser Company in New York State. And so you can see the Fraser. It actually still has some of these little pills in here. These are 110-year-old cannabis pills that are 1 to 8 grams of cannabis. It has a nifty little bottle. This bottle's about 1890, circa 1890, with this sort of thing. Now this next one next to it's from the 1920s. It's a fluid extract of cannabis from the American Druggist Company, also in New York, Long Island and New York. This one is a specific medicine cannabis extract, and it has a lot of language on here about using it for pain and pelvic problems and gastrointestinal ailments. Right next door, we have this was cannabis, organic cannabis. You just buy this, and then you put this into an alcohol or a pint of water, and then you would take 1 dessert spoonful. It says the properties are a narcotic, a nerve sedative, an antispasmodic, an anodyne, and you infuse this ounce of cannabis packed in here into an ounce or 1 ounce to 1 pint of water. Leaving the medicinal behind, we have our hemp twine, and every week we take a little chunk of this hemp twine and put it in this hemp seed oil. This is hemp seed oil, and so we burn it. And this is to demonstrate that hemp is an energy source, and that this is the reason marijuana is illegal. So we aren't running our cars and heating our homes with hemp seed oil, which any farmer can grow and get over 300 gallons an acre. Instead, we're using petrochemicals, and which are capital intensive. So the money's not going to our farmers, it's going to the Saudi princes and our corporate masters. And so right next door, I was in the store just tonight, and I found this on the shelf. It's refrigerated. It's hemp and sage sausage. And so it's hemp seed with sage, and it's gluten-free and soy-free, and made with nutritious, organic, whole food ingredients and plant protein. Right next door to, they actually, in this health food store, there was someone handing out little chunks of hemp burger. And so I said, well, I've got a, where is that at? And I went and bought it just tonight. So this is made with pure hemp. It's a nutritional superfood, and each hemp burger is a powerhouse of omega-3s. Turn your burger into a yummy, healthy food. And then last but not least, we have our Nativa hemp seed oil. So that's our hemp sharing for tonight. We have another caller.
Awesome.
Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. How are you doing, Paul?
Very well, very well.
This is Cliff Duvall in Texas.
Hey, Cliff, it's good to hear from you. Hi,
It's
Cliff,
great
I'm
to
here
hear
too.
from you. I didn't recognize Casper. He's in a suit and tie. He's in a shirt and tie.
I know.
Didn't recognize. Wanted to let y'all know that we're really doing a lot of work down here in Texas trying to get some things done. And
well, it's exciting to hear, you know, Wendy Davis for the Democrats is saying that they should have medical marijuana. And even, almost amazingly, Rick Perry in Davos, Switzerland said he's in favor of decriminalizing marijuana.
Well, I think in one aspect he forgot that in 2007 the Texas legislature unanimously approved House Bill 2391, which was a cite and release law. And so, but that's left up to the individual police officer whether or not they want to write you a ticket and have you appear in court, or whether they want to drag you through the the mill.
Well, Cliff, you come to our hemp stock festival every September. It looks like it might be a couple weeks later this year. The city has recommended that we have it on, I think it's the 27th and 28th of September, instead of the 6th and 7th of September, which we had formerly scheduled it for. But all the decisions haven't been made, but we're looking forward to you coming down. I know you've been working with Waco, the Waco chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws for many years.
Yes, I founded the chapter in 2009 here, and also some exciting news. I'm on the ballot for the Texas House of Representatives for the November ballot. I am on the ballot.
So are you running as an independent or?
The Libertarian Party of Central Texas has been trying to get me on their ticket for over a year. And I told them I wouldn't run as a paper candidate like they usually like to fill up the ballots with.
Right.
And we came to an agreement that I'm going to go toe-to-toe with the incumbent. And he does not have he doesn't have a runoff. Nobody's running against him. We don't have a Democrat in the area running against him. So it is he and I in the November election.
All right, we'll be following that. I don't know if you'll see you out here at the Hempstock Festival if it's coming real close to your election time then.
Yeah, I already told my campaign people that I'm taking that weekend off.
All right, well, it's been moved, or well, it might be moved. We'll see. I'll let you know for sure.
Well, I know you will, and I really appreciate y'all inviting me out every year to help and just have a great time. I always have a great time. I always learn something every time I'm out there. I always meet someone new, and I always have a wonderful time, Paul. You and all of the people.
That's what it's all about. And
THC,
changing the hemp and cannabis laws.
Yeah, y'all are just on top of everything, and y'all have taught me so much, and y'all have helped me actually live. And, well, you know that from a personal standpoint with our own talking. But y'all have actually pulled me back from the brink of death, and most people didn't realize that, but my doctors did, thank goodness, and I was able to educate them enough to where they were kind enough to fax my medical records to your facility, and I guess last year at Hempstock I became OMMP.
All right. Well, we look forward to renewing your license this year. You have to bring that up in your campaign that you have to go to Oregon to get a medical marijuana permit.
That's correct, and that's one thing that I think we need to make sure that other states follow suit with is reciprocation, grow your own, and hey, if your state doesn't let you, let's talk to your doctors and see if they'll let you.
All right, Cliff, I had a friend, Gateway Galbraith, who was running for governor of Kentucky for so many years. He always said that if he won, he'd invite me personally to the inauguration, and after the swearing in, we would go up into the governor's mansion, and he and I and people like Paul Stanford and a few others would pass around a big old fat joint to celebrate right there in the governor's office and then also in the governor's mansion. Can I have that promise from you?
You're not running for governor, though, right?
No, I'm not running for governor, but...
He's running for state rep.
State rep?
Oh,
when you run for governor, call me.
Down to my inauguration, of course.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Cliff. We're running out of time here, so we got to run.
And when you run for governor, give me a call.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you very much.
You know, coming up next weekend on September 22nd, there's going to be a Hemp Aid concert in Sacramento, California.
Cool.
Chris Christopherson, famous songwriter, actor, is putting on a concert along with our friend John Trudell and his band Bad Dog. So if you can make it down to Sacramento, California next Saturday, you can go to Hemp Aid. It'll be a great show. I hope to see you there. We have a little video of John Trudell we're going to run, and we'll be back in just a moment. Here it comes. It won't be long now. I kind of sprung it on the volunteer studio.
Didn't Chris Christopherson write Me and Bobby McGee?
Among other things.
He is a very talented artist. So I prefer to hear other people sing his songs, kind of like Dylan.
There's some kind of problem. Plus, I think we're almost running out of time. But
No,
you know
we
what?
always have time for hemp.
Speaking of, give us a plug for Time for Hemp in 30 seconds or less.
We did a very special 3-hour presentation this morning, all in French, the language of love. Go to the website. You can download it, check it out, and share us with your friends. Timeforhemp.com.
Okay. And let's see. We have 2 initiative campaigns right now. We need your help to put these things on the ballot. Go to our website, hemp.org, H-E-M-P. Pick up the initiatives. If you or a loved one need help finding a doctor who can help you get medical marijuana recommendations so you can be legal in Oregon, Washington, California, Hawaii, Michigan, Maine, or many other states, then go to our website at hemp.org as well, or you can call us at 1-800-723-0188. Anywhere in the country, you can call, that number, 1-800-723-0188. We're going to go out with some great music from John Cornette and Jan Sue Hirsch. Thank you again, Catherine.
Absolutely.
Thank you, viewers. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp.